Welcome to Straight Talk with Billy Kay. I'm Billy Keyserling, who's fortunate enough to be the mayor of my hometown, Beaufort. Part of my job is to lead a civil conversation among the people of Beaufort, and it's a conversation about tomorrow. So on this show, we bring on people who have special interests, who bring special perspectives, and we don't have to agree, to talk about current events in the city of Beaufort. Today I have with me on my far right Colonel John Payne, retired Marine Corps colonel and veteran from the Military Enhancement Committee efforts in the Base Realignment Commission efforts in the past. With us also is Jon Rembold, who is the chairman of the board of the Beaufort Regional Chamber of Commerce, out of which the Military Enhancement Committee works. Several months ago, it became clear as the Congress was stalemated over the budget that the Department of Defense budget was going to be cut by somewhere in the neighborhood of just under $500 million. A couple of weeks ago, Paul Revere, I like to call him, Senator Lindsey Graham, ran and came into Beaufort on a circuit around the state with the national media basically saying the Congress is coming, the Congress is coming. And he was talking about the dysfunction of the Congress and the fact that the Congress's inability to make priorities and to create a budget has put our military community and our national defense at great risk. A process called sequestration, which is a meat cleaver approach to budget cutting versus the Base Realignment Commission, which is more like a scalpel. So John, you want to tell us sort of where we are with sequestration?
Well, if nothing happens, we're going to be at sequestration, which is just a great big second semester word that means they're going to take a whole bunch of items off of the table. There are about 62 or 63% of all those items in the federal budget are untouchable by sequestration because they're mandated by law. Those things that the Congress can touch are defense and a few other items that amount to about 48% of the federal budget. If sequestration occurs, what will happen is that the military budget will be cut. We've already agreed, the military's already agreed to budget cuts of about $480 billion before sequestration was even talked about. Now, if sequestration happens, there'll be another $500 billion in cuts. That's really going to leave the country in pretty sad shape for defense. To give you an example, the Navy will be about the size that it was in 1915, 2 years before World War I. The Army will be about the size that it was in 1940, almost 2 full years before World War II, and the Air Force will be smaller than it's ever been. With emerging powers like China, we just can't afford that. It's unthinkable.
What does that mean, John, to Beaufort? As the chairman of the Chamber of Commerce, which works with businesses and has been helping businesses grow, obviously these kinds of cuts could be very significant.
It's very scary to the Chamber of Commerce and to the close to 650 members that we have. We often hear stories when we talk about Brac of back when Desert Storm occurred and the virtual ghost town that downtown Beaufort was. Think of your favorite stores and think of your favorite restaurants. Think of places you take your children, grandchildren, things like that. A lot of those will have to close down because a big number of their clientele is made up of the military folks and the families who take part in our daily life in Beaufort, and that could change if this sequestration goes through.
Well, that's 1.2 billion, I guess, is the total economic impact of the military? That's all the military.
In Beaufort.
In Beaufort.
Mhm. Annually.
And what kind of, we'll be talking a lot more than a 15% cut there than when we talk about sequestration and cutting the budgets. I mean, that's restaurants, that's clothing stores, that's real estate, that's automobiles, that's movie theaters, that's dry cleaners. I mean, that's all these things we depend on, and would they then be able to sustain themselves so that they can serve you and me?
Right.
A lot would not, I think, Billy, because what happens is Beaufort is made up of small businesses. It's not large chain stores, and those small businesses would have a real tough time surviving. Talk to the small businessmen that survived Desert Storm in 1991. They will tell you that it was a ghost town, and it didn't recover for several years.
Yeah, we've got other businesses in town who depend directly on the military. We've got contractors who are Beaufort-based, multi-generational, local family-owned businesses who've been working on the air station at Paris Island and the Naval Hospital for decades. And those folks employ local people. And then suppliers, local suppliers and regional suppliers help those projects out. And if 1 or 2 or 3 bases close, those guys are in a lot of trouble.
When Senator Graham was here, I mean, he basically said that if Cherry Point Air Station survives, MCAS Beaufort will be gone. If the Marine Training Depot in the West Coast survives, Paris Island would be gone. I mean, we're talking about, Senator Graham calls it, what did he call it? He calls it Brac, base realignment on steroids, that it is absolutely arbitrary, and that as opposed to Brac, where you have a team of people, and we'll come back after the break and talk a little bit about the difference between Brac and sequestration. But I say one is with a scalpel, where we got a shot, and where you, through your efforts and leadership, have been very successful in the past. But how do you fight off the meat cleaver?
And it really makes a lot more sense for the military to determine which bases they can stand to lose and which programs they can stand to lose than it does to turn those things over to politicians who are always going to say, well, shucks, those things that are built in my district are obviously the most important. And that's what happens.
That's exactly what happens. The, you know, I mean, the first district had as our congressman in the old days, Mendel Rivers, which is one of the reasons Beaufort to Charleston had such a heavy military presence. But the Congress doesn't work that way. And, you know, this isn't about Democrats and Republicans. It's not about President Obama or presumptive nominee Mitt Romney. The reality, my personal view, is that the president and the leadership in the other party and the leaders in both parties in Congress ought to go behind the door, lock it, and say the American people deserve better than this.
They
because,
really do.
You know, we're not talking just about the businesses we're talking about in Beaufort. We're talking about some of the big city, big industries who are supplying the military. And we're talking about the Boeings, the Lockheeds. We're talking about massive potential layoffs if these programs are. And it's really, you know, I mean, there's no explanation for it other than the absolute inability of 535 members of Congress to put the American people in the national defense first. So hopefully Senator Graham's effort or crusade is going to help us. We've got to take a break, but when we come back, I would like us to talk more the specifics about how Brac is run, but most importantly, what it is those people out there watching us today can do to help the effort, the collective efforts of us with other communities in South Carolina and across the country to protect the national defense and the economy. We'll be back in a few minutes. Welcome back to Straight Talk with Billy Kay. I have with me today Colonel John Payne, who is chairman of the Military Enhancement Committee and Jon Rembold, who's the chairman of the Beaufort Regional Chamber of Commerce. What we're talking about is the potential for economic tsunami, as I call it, if the Congress doesn't get itself in order and pass a budget that is protective of our national defense and other programs. But specifically, we talked a little while ago about Senator Graham telling us about the process of sequestration, which is a result of a Congress that is deadlocked and unable to pass a budget. We talked a little bit about the economic impact to Beaufort. We talked a little bit about what it means from Colonel Payne's experience to the military. Senator Graham made a specific request. He said, help me. Help me. We've got to start a national movement. And Beaufort, I know from reading memos from the governor's office, is actually out front in this effort, at least in South Carolina, if not the region. So let's talk a little bit about what the committees are doing, but also what our viewers can do to help get a sledgehammer and knock in the heads of some congressmen to think about the big picture and not just the logjam that we've got in Washington.
Sure. Well, first I would say I think that when Senator Graham said that Beaufort is ground zero for this campaign, for his information campaign, that means a lot. And
He started here.
right. When he launches a campaign like that in Beaufort, you know, the Chamber of Commerce is the action organization. We're an advocacy group. And so what that says to me is we've got a chance to lead. And that's what we should do. John's going to help explain some of the ways that citizens and businesses can get involved, but that's exactly what we need to do. It's serious. We need to take it seriously. But we, you know, to focus on a positive, to try to turn a negative into a positive, let's seize the leadership opportunity and get out there in front and try to help this situation.
And I think we're well on our way to doing that. We have put together some suggested letters that you could write into to your congressmen and senators saying, hey, don't let this happen. It's a disaster for our national defense and for our country. I don't think in all my years I have seen anything that was as selfishly motivated as this fight that's going on over sequestration. We've got to get people to sit down and talk with each other and come to a conclusion as quickly as possible. It just has to happen.
And those letters, it's not that Congressman Scott or Congressman Wilson might not be with us, but what we need for them to do is to go to the leadership in their parties. Sure. Because this is going to be a top-down leadership decision, and it's time for all of the leaders, both parties, all the committees, to come together.
And when they get a stack of letters and emails that high, all on the same subject, then they pay attention.
That's right, and they have to go to their leadership.
And say we have to address this.
I'm always asked the question, or frequently, of our members, you know, what is a chamber? What's a chamber about? What does my membership mean? And my response to them is, you are the membership. So if there is a local issue that needs to be addressed, I can go advocate for you much stronger if I've got the support of 600 or 700 members behind me.
Absolutely.
And this is a similar situation.
Unless you're lobbying city council, right?
Right.
No, I'm just teasing.
Then I just come on TV with you. But we need, it's strength in numbers, like you said. If we get the mail to pile up and the emails to pile up, then the level of seriousness is much higher for these folks.
But we've addressed several issues there in the past, and if your senator or representative gets 3 letters, there isn't much that's going to happen. If they get 300 letters, it's a different ball game. And you've been on the other end in Washington and know how it works.
You know, I worked in the United States Senate during the Vietnam War. And as a summer intern, it was really quite interesting. My job was that every letter that had to do with the Vietnam War, piles, every day, like this. I would read every letter, and I'd put them in piles. And at the end of the day, I would walk into Senator Hollings, and he'd say, what are the people saying today? And I'd say, Senator, we got 300 letters that said this, we got 200 that said that. People are upset about you because you said this. So they do listen, and you know, you wonder, what can one person do? Well, look at an election that we had just yesterday, or excuse me, last week in Beaufort, where, you know, someone won by 90 votes. Well, those letters do make a difference, I promise you.
Sure they do.
A lot of them are counted by machines, or they're counted by simple interns like I was when I was 20 years old. But the reality is those people in Washington, the 435 members of the House and the 100 senators, work for us. And if we don't take it upon ourselves to tell them how we feel, how upset we are that they are unable to get together and pass a national budget and let go at risk the jobs, the national defense issues, then I say sort of phooey on us. But that is going to be your mission. City Council, Monday night, I think County Council passed a resolution that will go to all the members and to the leadership of both parties. I think Bluffton did it last night. Hilton Head will do it, and the city of Beaufort. We're going to actually try to do it in 2 phases just to get a little more publicity, so that we'll have a conversation where you'll be invited to come to the table. Because people really, you know, this national budget is not something most of us go to bed and think about unless it directly affects us. And somehow you have a big word called sequestration, or you battled it with Brac. What does Brac mean? Base Realignment Commission. Well, I'm not, what does that have to do with me? Well, the bottom line is this does have to do with us. And we're counting on you, John. We're counting on the Chamber and the Military Enhancement Committee, which takes the lead. That's part of the state mobilization to basically help the people understand that this is about them. This is about their job. This is about their favorite merchant. So we're here together encouraging you to do that. Anything else, John, on the economy, though? That's the one that hits me the most, because I do remember, as Colonel Payne said, the Desert Storm ghost town.
Right. Well, the air station alone contributes around $600 million annually to the local economy, and a lot of those dollars stay, you know, right in Beaufort County.
Because
they recycle through the
they're
economy.
things that the air station is buying from local suppliers.
Right.
Just the payrolls.
Just the payrolls.
Just the
People are
payrolls.
buying groceries,
Right.
buying cars.
And think about everything. Think about churches. Think about schools. You're going to see dwindling numbers in all of those places. So your charitable contributions will decrease as well. So we're not going to be able to take care of the folks in our community who we want to take care of as well as we can.
I found a document from the last Brac that indicated, you know, a lot of folks will tell you, well, most of these towns are better off after the military leaves. And it just didn't turn out that way. Figures indicate that 20 years after a base realignment and closure, that only 72% of the civilian jobs had been replaced and none of the military jobs. And those are big numbers.
Those are big, big numbers. We're about out of town, so why don't we share with the viewers how they can get involved,
Sure.
how they can get information, how they could volunteer to help with the effort.
Sure. Well, probably the easiest way is to go right to the Beaufort Regional Chamber of Commerce website, which is BeaufortChamber.org, and we'll have some links up there for you to access. It'll give you information on how to contact our delegation in Washington and write those letters that John was talking about. And we'd certainly also like to have financial contributions, because you can't do anything in this game without money.
It's better than like to have. We need financial contributions.
Give me that website again. Give it to me 2 more times.
All
Very
right,
clearly.
BeaufortChamber.org is the Chamber of Commerce website, and there will be a Military Enhancement Committee tab at the top of the page.
Very soon.
Very soon. So BeaufortChamber.org.
And if you have any questions about this or anything else from Mayor Billy, my email is billyk@ISLC. Thank you for joining us.